Who's in there with you? Nobody. Just nothing. Don't worry about
Just
it.
me and my characters. I am a huge Turtles fan. I grew up. I was 11 years old when this movie came out, so
Jeez, I was only 12.
Well, you did a hell of a job writing it. Let me tell you that.
It was the first AI script ever written. I'm kidding. I just got AI and I said, write me a movie about this comic book, Ninja Turtles. And he said, 3 minutes, I had a script.
Done.
And
Done.
I have the script.
His new television series.
Oh, God. This is the script.
Oh, look at that.
So here's your script with your storyboards in it. See?
Yeah.
You know what all that is, right?
Of course,
Dialogue,
yeah. I'm a writer also.
Oh, are you? Okay.
Yeah.
So this is the first script.
That's great. Wow. Well, Bobby, there have been 7 TMNT movies made over the years, but you, sir, wrote our very first one, 1990s Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, bona fide classic. I said it when I was 11 years old and I first saw it in theaters, and I stand by it. What kind of responsibility was it for you at the time to write to adapt this beloved series of comic books and also cartoons, obviously, for the big screen?
Well, first of all, I didn't know anything about the Turtles. It was just on TV. Playmates was at that point, to my knowledge, the only toy company. They paid for the pilot for that series. I think they paid for the first 6 episodes. And my friend, I was writing a movie for Golden Harvest, which did the Bruce Lee, Jackie Chan movies. And my buddy, Kim Dawson, called me one day, and he lived in Newport, I lived in Long Beach, and he said, meet me for lunch, I want to show you something. We met at the In-N-Out Burger in Westminster. We still think there should be a plaque there. And he gave me a VHS, some copies of the show, and just some little tchotchkes and stuff, and he said, you're working for the company that's got to make this movie. They have the best martial arts guys in the business. You put them in you build the turtle costumes, you put them in them, you loop the voices, dub the voices. And so I said, well, okay, well, let me look at it. And how Kim directed The Last Mouseketeer Club with Timberlake and all those stars, and people that became stars. And he also produced and directed Gallagher the Comedian's Showtime shows. So Gallagher and Gary Proper, his manager, were in Detroit, and during the day kicking around Detroit, and they were comic book freaks. And they went in a little comic book store and they found Peter and Kevin's first graphic comic book. And they got a hold of him on the phone because, Gary's going, and Gallagher going, this is really cool, because it was so different. And they called Peter and Kevin, made a deal to let them try to find a company to make the movie. So I kept going to my boss at Golden Harvest, said, Tom, he was paying me to write another movie. I said, you got to see this turtle thing. He said, Herbs, don't bother me with the Pigeon Ninja Turtles. You call it Pigeon Ninja Turtles. Just finish the movie I'm paying you to write. And 3 months, I pitched it in Hollywood to everybody, and I literally got, on some meetings, some of the big name producers in this town were just laughing me out of the meeting and calling my agent and said, who's the stoner that came in here with this turtle thing? They just thought I would be smoking pot, and this was coming off.
Pizza-loving turtles that do martial arts.
Okay, maybe Peter and Kevin and those guys were smoking bones back there, but it doesn't make them bad guys, right? But they were in Northampton. They were in Northampton, Mass. So anyway, Tom and I, he said, if you bring this up one more time, I'm going to throw you out of here. And we went and had a drink after work, and he mentioned he had 2 kids. How old, Tom? My son's 12, my daughter's 10. I said, go home and ask him about the Turtles. By the time I got back down to Long Beach from Beverly Hills, I got a message on my recorder call. That's how old I am, the first answer machine. Herb's Babes. Those 2 words means you've closed the deal. Get your buddy and meet me for breakfast in the morning. Because his kids said, Dad, it's like what's happening. And when I tell them my panels, there was no cell phones. Well, there was. It was like a lunchbox, the first cell phone. There was no iPads. There was none of that. Kids watched TV like you. How old were you? How old were you then? In 88, 89?
Yeah, I was 8 or 9.
Yeah, you're the audience. God love you, man. Anyway, so you guys
we made you guys a hit.
You did. You're still making us a hit. But you guys watch TV.
Wow.
You know, my grandkids watch, they on their PlayStation
Right.
or their Xbox.
So the cartoon was on at this time.
cartoon was on.
Yeah. And the executives were still laughing you out of the room.
But here's the thing. Your parents, the parents didn't, they're at work. They didn't know that the kids were in there watching this thing called the Ninja Turtles. Then when anyway, then I think it was the first or second Halloween, it became like then it was showing in the stores. The gear started to show up, and the kids wanted to be Ninja Turtles for their birthday. Yeah. Right? Which maybe you were. That was the cool thing. So so I go to Tom when that night we're having a drink. He tells me his kids. He calls me. He said, Herbs, get your buddy, and we have breakfast. And we do the pitch to him again, and he goes, yeah, I don't think so. And we're going, what? And he has an article he sent me where we say saved by one butt cheek. He was sliding out of the booth at breakfast, and Kim says, there is the ancillary market, licensing. And Tom goes, oh, yeah. And he said, if we get this movie made, they're going to make a ton of money selling pajamas and masks and costumes. And Tom slides back in. He says, okay, let's talk about this a little bit. Next thing I know, we go home. I go home. Kim goes home. The next day, Tom calls me. He goes, Herbs, pack a suitcase. We're going to Northampton, Mass. to meet Kevin and Peter, who wrote the comic book, with a team of guys. Do you know that? There was a group of guys. Mm-hmm. It was interesting. Some of them would draw, and then some would color, which was interesting. Well, that first book, comic book, someone just showed it. They're selling them downstairs. It was just black and white. It was a graphic comic book. I don't know if you ever saw it. Mm-mm. Anyway, so my job to go with Tom and us to convince Peter and Kevin that we were the company to make this movie, which we did. We come back. I'm home a week. He says, pack another suitcase. You have to go back to Massachusetts, and you have to write a story that they will sign off. They needed to sign off on this script. Mm-hmm. I thought, you'll be there a week. I was there more than a week because I'd meet them, and either one or the other liked the treatment I wrote, and the other one, nah. And I was there. But what I found out was the gal at Golden Harvest in Beverly Hills, when I called her, I said, God, these guys, they can't agree on how'd they get a comic book done? And she said, don't worry, honey, because every time you have to write a treatment, they're paying you $15,000. Not them, but the company. And I said, good, I'll stay here all year. That's fine.
How many treatments
I'm
you need?
not doing anything. So anyway, it was, I would say maybe about a month, and I came back. And then it started all coming together. And Tom called me and said, maybe 3 weeks later, he said, pack a trunk. Where am I going? You're going to England. Because he hired Steve Barron to direct, who was out of London, who had a company called Limelight. He made music videos. Mm-hmm. He did the famous Michael Jackson music video. And if you saw the movie, I thought Steve was brilliant. Mm-hmm. I thought the opening of the movie was, because you kids, because I kept hopping around the theaters in L.A. when it opened that weekend, and I come in the theater, and the kids, when it first started, it starts, you get the title and stuff, and then the whole thing comes up with the crime scene, and with April and stuff. Mm-hmm. And the kids are like, where's the turtles? Mm-hmm. And all of a sudden, she leaves work that night. Remember that scene? Mm-hmm. And she's accosted by the gang. Yep. And all of a sudden, you see the side bounce off the wall. Mm-hmm. I get goosebumps every time I tell this story. It's like yesterday. Yeah. And you hear the kids go, oh! And then the brilliance of Steve is he cuts to the manhole cover and Raffi looking out and going, damn. Yeah. And shuts it. I get such goosebumps right now. And you could just feel the power. I looked at my wife and said, this is a hit. Yeah. I mean, I'm going to cry.
It was.
I said, all these years later, this is a hit. And the next shot was credits. And then we get in the movie, and it's the sewer, and you hear them kibitzing back and forth, and you see their silhouettes still teasing the audience. They came on the screen. The kids went you kids went crazy.
We did.
When they first rolled into the scene.
I remember this.
I looked at my wife, I said, damn, this is a hit. And Tom Gray, 3 days before the movie opened, we're in Beverly Hills going to lunch, and we're in the car, and he said, boy, Herbs, I hope we don't have Howard the Duck on our hands. And I said, Howard the Duck fell out of the sky like a comet, like a rock. We have an audience, Tom. Mm-hmm. These kids have been watching. They're waiting to see this movie. They want to see these turtles, live action turtles. And so right then, he said, I'll tell you, he said, what do you think we're going to do this weekend? I said, I think we're going to open at 20 million, which was a lot back then. He goes, Herbs, this movie opens at 20 million, Golden Harvest will buy you anything you want. This beautiful convertible Mercedes pulled up, 2-seater next to us at the light, and I went, I want one of those. Black, red interior, convertible. Mm-hmm. You got it. So the movie, he went to New York because it was going to open there first, time-wise. He calls it, Herbs, the line is 2 blocks long to get into this. This is so great. Well, the rest is history. The movie did almost 25 million, I think. I'm looking over at Sam.
Did you get that car?
I'm not done. Almost 25 million, right? I get married during this whole time. I'm in Tortola on my honeymoon, and my lawyer, Tom Rowan, sends a note over to Tom Gray and says, Bobby's on his honeymoon, as you know, you're at the wedding, but you did the 20, you hit the mark, so you can get the Mercedes and drop it off at the office here and bring the keys up, and we'll give it to him when he comes back. The answer to your question is, no, I never got the car. And I always tell that in the panel.
No.
And if I needle him forever, I said, where's my car?
Yeah.
So in that movie, I think 5 years, it was a top grossing independent film. Yeah. And we opened,
I think until Blair Witch. Yeah.
And we won the People's Choice Award, one of those award shows. Yeah. And Julia and Gear were the hosts of the show, and we're backstage for the show, and they're giving us the stink eye. We're going hi, and they're like, because we were their competition, right? And they'd win one day, we would win the next, and anyway, the rest is history. And here I'm sitting with you. Yeah, I'm an older guy now. I'm 90. I'm kidding. I know I look it, but I'm still blown away by the love for that first movie. Next year's our 35th anniversary. Yeah.
Well, how do you look back at the film now? I mean, do you revisit it? Do you feel like it still holds up today?
My God, yeah. I took my grandkids. We during COVID, they had some 900 theater screenings, right, during COVID. I mean, I moved to Phoenix from here, and I picked 3 AMC theaters to go and meet the audience and sign stuff. During COVID, 3 people came to the screening, and I went, the hell is that? And the theater manager going, they didn't send us any posters. Nobody knows about this. I said, well, I was on the morning shows here. And they said, well, everyone's at work or something. I said, no one's at work. Anyway, the third screening, I took my wife and my 4 grandkids. My granddaughter was 5. The twins were 8. And Drake was 12. My point is, and Drake had seen it, the oldest one. I took him to see it, and Tammy was at one, I'm at the other, and we figured 10 minutes they got to pee, because it's usually the kids, they go to a show. You got 10 minutes and they're done. They never left the screen. I'm going to cry in a minute. Oh. I had 5 fans that came, plus my family, and I got up and talked to them first, and I said, these are my grandkids. Their dad was 14 when this movie was made, he and his brother. They got to have the premiere. They sat with MC Hammer. They were blown away. And MC it's really cool. Yeah. And I said, these kids weren't even on the landscape, and they're here today. I'm going to cry. This makes me cry. And I said, they're here to see this picture. And when it was done, they looked at me and said, Pop, that's the bestest movie I've ever seen. And I was like blown away that all these years later, it still does today. I've just got done with an hour autograph thing from you name the ages. They were there. Yeah. You know, from your age down to there was 5-year-old, 6-year-old kids today. And it just keeps being handed down. So our title for the panel is the mothership today, because this was the mothership. Yeah. And we've had 6 since, and it's just become part of, you're in the business, it's become part of the social fabric, the Turtles. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. It's just, it's mine. I had no idea. Didn't have a doubt. My instinct was this was going to not be a dud, that this movie was going to be, we had an audience, it was going to do well. I had no idea that 34 years later I'd be sitting here talking to you or at a Comic-Con with this movie. So,
something you said, I mean, many things you said piqued my interest that I would love to follow up on, but one thing you mentioned was the fact that the comedian Gallagher was involved in this movie's journey, mm-hmm. which is really interesting because I read this fun fact about the movie that kind of blew my mind, and I want to know if you'd ever heard this, that at one point Roger Corman was trying to make it. Have you heard about this at all?
I don't know about Roger. No, I don't know. But I do know Roger, and
yeah.
I had talked to him
Okay.
some years later.
This is one of those things you read on the internet. You never know if it's true or not. There's a lore on the internet that says Roger Corman pitched a Turtles movie at one point. I'm assuming prior to yours finally seeing the light of day, that was going to star the four of the biggest comedians at the time.
Oh, really?
Gallagher,
That's another deal.
Gallagher,
Yeah, yeah. No.
Sam Kinison,
Oh my God.
Bobcat Goldthwait, and Billy Crystal.
Oh my God.
And they were going to paint them all green, apparently.
So it was just an idea he had.
Yeah.
I have to. I know Roger. I have to ask him about it.
Please
I've
do.
never heard this.
Yeah.
No, but it had nothing to do with this.
No, it was a separate
If
project.
I may, this was so Raymond Chow, who owned Golden Harvest, who was the Rupert Murdoch of Asia.
Yeah.
He didn't want to do this movie, and the story is that he and his wife were in the Philippines for some dinner thing, and the president of the Philippines or whatever, they're at dinner, and the wives are talking, and the one wife, so what's your husband doing, Raymond? Anyway, she says something about Ninja Turtles, and the lady from the Philippines says, oh, he's got to do that movie. My grandkids love the Ninja Turtles. She told him, the wife, right? Who's the boss, whether we like it or not. It's in the bottom of your marriage. Says, I'm the boss, okay? Because I always look at my wife and says, where does it say you're the boss? It's at the bottom of the marriage paper.
You got to read the fine print.
That's right. So anyway, he said, okay, I'll put $6 million up for it. That's it. So Tom Gray had to find a partner, more money, another $4.5 million, I think. He had Fox was going to do it with him and 20th Century Fox, and they were getting the domestic rights to the picture, which turned out to be a gold mine. Then there was a regime change at Fox, and when a studio gets a new regime, they come in with their projects and dump the other stuff. And Barry Diller looked at this and went, nah, I'm not doing that, and threw it away. I'm in Europe, I'm in London writing the movie with Steve Barron Steve wanted me there, and Jim Henson had the Creature Shop there. So I would, it was like this mix of us sketching the turtles and making the clay and watching this thing morph into the costumes was like, oh my God, I'm really, and every day I'm going, I'm really doing this? Wow. My God. Yeah. So when you go
Jim
and
Henson
see the movie
too.
come up on the screen the first time and your name, you go, holy, I was an actor before. I was in some movies, and the first time you just see yourself on a screen, you go, oh my God. You go like this, oh my God, that's me, giant size. Then that movie came up, I said, no, it was the Rough Cut. Went to the Rough Cut at Sam Goldwyn Theater, little theater. And I'm looking at that, before they got it all ready to go, shiny and edited, down and I looked at it, I said, my God, this really happened. It was like I was in this dream, this wonderful dream. I've got to ask Roger, because what happened is Fox bailed out, and so Tom called and says, take a couple of weeks off, we got a problem. And I didn't know what the problem was. They needed more money. And they took it to New Line, and I'm going to tell you real quick, this is my life, the irony of my life. I'm involved in a project at Warner Brothers, at Clint Eastwood's company right now, that I've been trying to get made forever. And the gal who wrote the script told me, I just met her a few weeks ago, she said, Bobby, I was a reader for New Line back then. I'm the one that read your script and said, you need to make this movie. Wow. This is a woman from 30-something years ago that circles back in my life, and she says, I'm the reader for New Line that said, I'm repeating myself, make this picture. What's the odds of that? In my life, they're very good, the odds. Yeah. And New Line came in, gave Bob Shea and Michael Collins $4.5 million, and they got the domestic, and the rest is history, except Tom Gray told me several years ago, this movie, the first one, did not play in Asia. They didn't want it. They thought we were making a mockery of their culture. Japan and stuff, they wouldn't show the movie. Once it became a hit, they said, yeah, we'll take number 2, number 3, and number 4. But at the beginning, they thought we were making a mockery of their culture. So it didn't do foreign. I can't remember the full number of what this movie did, how much it made, but for $10.5 million, it made a hell of a lot of money.
I think it made over 200 in the U.S. alone, right?
Oh, yeah, I think so, yeah. But it played well in Europe, England, those places, but they didn't, Asia. I don't know if, I'm sure at some point they showed it in Asia.
Well, you got the script here, and one thing I always love to ask screenwriters, because especially as a writer myself, you know how many drafts these things go through. You were talking about how many treatments it went through with Kevin and Peter. I want to know if you can remember sort of how drastically it changed from those earliest versions you had, and give us some sort of examples of what is the alternate world version of this movie that we never saw? Like, what were some things that were in that early version that didn't make the screen? Because there was also another writer that came on it at one point, so I imagine there were a lot of changes.
Todd came after me. I went back for the shoot. I had a really bad back, and I went back for the shoot for, I think, 2 days, and I had to come back to Long Beach and get my back surgery, so I missed the shoot. Todd came in and did a rewrite and put some great stuff in it. But these things, these are a collaboration.
Yeah.
The producers had something to say. Steve Barron, I'm in England, and I'm right. In fact, I was in London writing, and I knew people there. I'm single, I'm partying, not getting the work done. And he took me out to his country home one weekend, the first weekend we were there, in this little town about the size of this room. And I said, Steve, I think I should stay out here and write this movie. You think so, love? I says, I'm not getting it done in London. There's too much going on. And I got it. But anyway, I would say I wrote maybe six drafts. And if I may, what time is it? Because I got to go to my.
Yeah, we're
thing.
gonna watch the time.
Okay.
This guy's
So
has a
think
panel.
I
You got
did-
about 5 more
I think
minutes.
I did about 6 drafts of mine, and then I just want to hit the bullet points on this. Lots of discussion, and people asked me in the panels, was there something that my research? I said the first thing I did was I watched the Four Musketeers movie with Michael York. And when they were out fighting, the Four Musketeers, they'd have that smart alecky stuff with each other, right? Or they'd stab a guy and have some quip to make, It had that smile in it. And the Marx Brothers were also in my head, the shenanigans. And also, never forgetting, these were teenagers, the Turtles. And also, a discussion with Tom Gray in saying, I'm not going to write down to you kids. I need to write in the middle somewhere because the parents are going to take them to the movie.
Yeah.
So I want mom or dad or whatever to go, your mom takes your dad or whatever, and then they come home and they talk to their lady friends or your schoolmates' parents, and they go, it's a good movie. You'll enjoy it because there was something for the
That's the
adult,
key.
too.
That's the key.
Yeah.
That's why Pixar movies are great.
Finding the middle was very important for me, and I studied Star Wars because I noticed that there was a tempo to the confrontations, the battles. Lucas is so brilliant, and I told Gray, I says, every battle scene in Star Wars had a theme. It wasn't, geez, we need to have a fight in this movie now. The writing led up to the confrontation.
Yeah.
A different theme, if I may, if we may. And that's what I did with this. I said, each one of these, and I just read in the book here, one of my favorite lines I wrote is, you are here to defend, not to start. Splinter told him.
Yeah.
I think that's when okay, that might have been in the den. Anyway.
So you studied the original trilogy, the original Star Wars trilogy.
Oh, yeah. But if you ever look at them, you'll see they didn't do, George would go, okay, we need a fight now. We're 15 minutes without it. No, there was always something led up in the writing to it, the setup, the confrontation. Something happens, and you have the conflict, and then the showdown. And then the last one at the end I love because Splinter steps in and gets rid of Shredder at the end, which I loved, It was a great way to button the movie. So a real trivia is that Kevin Eastman's in that scene, that last scene.
Right, yes.
With the
he's
garbage truck. Yeah. Yep. Peter is too shy. He didn't want to be in it, but Kevin, that's Kevin. That's the Stan Lee cameo thing, right?
Yeah.
Stan Lee, by the way, I'm sorry. Stan Lee, when the movie came out, he wanted to get involved with anything thereafter because he was taken by it.
Yeah.
Did you meet Stan?
I did.
Very cool guy.
Awesome guy. One of the greatest days of my life.
I wish I was a legend like him. That man was.
I actually did a shoot with him where we walked through every single one of his cameos in the Marvel movies.
Oh, did you really?
It was amazing.
Oh, yeah.
It was amazing.
He loved doing these.
Oh yeah, it was great. Well, I know you got to run in. I did want to ask you one follow-up question.
Sure.
Was there a scene or a character in those early drafts that didn't make it to the big screen that you were always bummed about, that you were particularly proud about, that you didn't see the light of
I
day?
added the character Tatsu, which was Shredder's right-hand guy, his henchman. And he was based on my sister's husband from Japan, Tatsu. And it was a tip of the hat to Tatsu, so who we just lost last year. But that's all right. He was a very cool guy, very bright, mathematician, but this was for Tatsu. And I'm an Air Force brat. I lived in Okinawa as a kid, so I had a feel for the culture. I've always loved that culture. This was just something that was meant to be. This was like divine intervention. And it's been a blessing. I'm just, all of us, Kim Dawson, we lost Gallagher. Gallagher kind of faded when the process got going. But it was Gallagher, it was really Gary Popper's manager, was a butt kicker. And he was a very famous surfer, by the way, Gary. Big time surfer. So
Had no idea that Gallagher played such a role.
Cowabunga came from Howdy Doody. I ask that all the time. It was a Howdy Doody character said Cowabunga, and the surfers picked up on it in the 50s, and they added dude to it. Cowabunga, dude, when they're out on their boards.
Yeah.
So that's where that comes from. So
I love it. I love it. I
the
love
rest
it.
is history.
The rest is history.
And two
Well,
more movies coming out, I'm to understand. Michael Bay's doing the next two.
oh yeah. Oh, okay. Well, and the Seth Rogen one was pretty great. Did you see that one?
I thought the dialogue was good. I don't have the eye for claymation.
Okay, got you.
And everybody, our fan base really keeps saying, please reboot the first movie.
Yeah.
Or the first couple, that look. And I
yeah.
would think that look would kill today if they could.
I would
ever
love
do
a.
it.
I would love a. I know there was TMNT, which was the animated sequel to Part 2, but
Right.
the Secret of Use. I would love another live action.
Yeah.
I would love another live action sequel. Well, Bobby, thank you for this gift of a
Thank you,
film.
Jeff.
So
Pleasure.
great,
Thanks
so
for
great to
having me
talk
on.
to you after all these years.
CBR.
Loving your work,
Thank you.
and just
There
really
was other
true
work.
pleasure.